How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to today's reaction video. So I had hoped that this video would be up a lot sooner, but I kind of overslept. But there's a good reason as to why. Last night we got to, I want to say experience, because it was so much more than just watch. So we got to experience the Champions League semi-final first leg between Barcelona and Inter Milan. Now I think everybody had their own idea regarding how exactly they thought the match would go. I did a prediction video, as I always do, and I actually said that Barcelona would win 3-1. That was half right, I guess. Someone did score 3 goals, and it was Barcelona, but Inter also scored 3 goals, and this was the final score on the night. It was Barcelona 3, Inter Milan 3. And it was a phenomenal game of football. I think it was a complete contrast to perhaps the first leg between Arsenal and PSG that ended 1-0 to PSG. And it had some moments of magic, but it was largely just boring to watch. This match, on the other hand, was jam-packed with action from the first whistle. I mean, we saw our first goal within 30 seconds, courtesy of Marcus Thuram. And I think from the get-go already then we saw Inter were not just going to come to the Olympic Stadium in Barcelona and play this defensive style of football. They were here to win, and they meant business. But I think also what it definitely confirmed for those of us who have been watching Inter this season is that Denzel Dumfries and Marcus Thuram are far more important than anybody actually thought. Now, I actually spoke about Inter's wingbacks in my video following the Coppa Italia semi-final that Inter lost against hometown rivals AC Milan. And Dumfries was absent in that match because he was still injured. But something that I did say was that with both DiMarco and Denzel Dumfries, DiMarco on the left and then Dumfries on the right, these players give Inter both offensive threat on those wings, but also defensive stability. And I think when you look at their replacements in Carlos Augusto for DiMarco and then Matteo Darmian for Dumfries, those players give you either or. They can either attack and then support you that way, or they can defend and just give you extra numbers at the back. But with Denzel Dumfries and DiMarco, you don't have to compromise. They do both. And that's why we actually saw Inter be such an attacking threat against this Barcelona team yesterday. Denzel Dumfries actually got 2 goals, both goals from corners, so again Barcelona proving to be a little shaky from set pieces, but Inter proving to be very efficient because they only got 2 corners last night and they scored from both. I think again, if you had to swap out Dumfries in that moment for Matteo Darmian perhaps, I don't think you would have gotten those results. I don't think you would have seen those 2 goals. And again, it's not because Darmian is a bad player. It's just that he brings something different to this team, and whatever it was that Dumfries was bringing to the team, Inter were really missing that during this period where he was injured. I think the same could be said for Marcus Thuram. When Lautaro Martinez has to play up front and he has Marcus Thuram next to him, you know they have this kind of telepathic connection between the two of them where one knows they have to drop in deeper to support the attack and the other one knows they can make that run off the ball. And they sort of just rotate naturally when it comes to doing that. The headlines this morning obviously were dominated by all of the news about Barcelona's youngster Lamine Yamal. He was phenomenal on the night. He sliced Inter apart to score his goal in the match as well. And it was a fantastic goal. We saw Ferran Torres score as well, and then Rafinha's thunderbolt coming off the goalpost, whacking Jan Sommer on the back and then going in for an own goal. But it really was a phenomenal game of football between these two sides, and for me it was particularly difficult to watch because these were the 2 teams that I actually wanted to see in the final of this year's competition. So yes, I get it in the semi-final, and yes, I get 2 matches between the 2 teams instead of 1. But I think really, based on the performance that we got last night, this would have made a very worthy final. I think both of these teams are definitely still in the run-in for the Champions League this season. I think both are still looking very, very strong. I think also The fatigue did start to creep into Inter last night. Around the 70th minute, you did see players looking tired. DiMarco came off. I think Marcus Thuram came off as well. We saw other players coming on who needed to get a bit of game time, but more importantly, we saw tired players getting a bit of a break. And for Inter, they now have to implement the squad rotation very, very effectively and efficiently. Simone Inzaghi is under a lot of pressure. His team needs to reclaim top spot from Napoli in the Serie A this weekend, and they've not made it easy for themselves in these last few matches. Mind you, this terrible run that Inter have been on, Denzel Dumfries was not playing, and Marcus Thuram missed a little bit of it as well. And I think that just goes to show that when Inter have their full squad available to them, they're a very, very good team. Barcelona this season, I think, have been very fortunate in the sense that, yes, some players have missed certain patches of the season, but when it comes to Hansi Flick's team, we've been able to see what I would say is the best 11 for most of the season. Players like Pedri and Dani Olmo, Rafinha and Lamine Yamal have just been able to avoid any long-term injuries. And yes, right now the Blaugrana are missing Lewandowski, so I think that does play a bit of a role in it as well. I think having an out-and-out centre forward like Lewandowski does allow Barcelona to put the finishing touch on all of these beautiful attacking moves that they come up with. But I think so far, Barca have been able to just avoid any injury crises this season, and that's why we've seen them perform so well pretty much on all fronts. For me, last night was a phenomenal game of football, but as always, I'm very curious to see what everybody else has to say about the match, because of course football is a sport that brings us all together, and I think it's important for us to enjoy and also understand one another's opinions. Again guys, there will be names and personal information and usernames shown from this point onwards. Please, if you disagree with anybody's opinion, this is not an excuse for you to go out and harass them or just confront them either physically in person or online. We do not promote that here. We do not encourage that here. If somebody has a different opinion to your own, perhaps try to put yourself in their shoes and see things from their point of view. But ideally here guys, I'm looking for us to criticize the idea, look at the tactics, look at the performance, talk about the match, and not attack one another. But without any further ado, let's get into it. First person here says, I'm not Barcelona fan, but this boy making football beautiful again and again throughout the season. Future will be very wonderful. Barcelona is lucky. I think this is kind of the accepted opinion about Lamine Yamal. He's come into this Barcelona team and he's just brought this energy about him again, and we're seeing it just infect everybody in this team. Barcelona look like a team of friends that are just out there enjoying themselves and having a good time. They are playing football, they are not doing football. When you watch Barcelona this season, it kind of makes you want to just call up your friends, grab a ball and go to the park and just kick about. That's it. It takes you back to those moments, being a young player, wanting to be on that pitch all the time. It just rolls back the years, and it's really just such a joy to watch. Somebody else here says, he's quick, has a great ball movement, he can dribble past players, great passing skill. This boy is an amazing player. Stopping him is very difficult. Okay, so here's a bit of inside info guys. I used to play as a wingback. I could play right back or left back. I hated the job because I had to do so much running, but I did love the idea of being able to stop a winger in their tracks. Lamine Yamal is very difficult to stop. If I'm playing left back, the only thing that I'm actually going to try to do with him all the time is keep him as close to the touchline as possible, not let him cut in, not let him get those crosses in. But here's the problem with Lamine Yamal, is he's proven that if he's not gonna cut in, he's gonna get those crosses in. And they're surprisingly accurate even though they are on his weaker foot. When he cuts in as well, he's not just looking to shoot, he's looking for those midfielders, players like Dani Olmo and Pedri who are arriving late in the box. So while you're paying attention to him, he's actually looking to divert the danger elsewhere. He's just operating as a distraction, looking to just sort of confuse the opposition defense. And it works so well every single time. He's a nightmare to defend against, and to be honest, I am grateful I've never had to play against a player who has had 10% of the talent that Lamine Yamal has. But it's not just because of Lamine Yamal. Barcelona as a club have been phenomenal. Somebody else here says Barcelona needs a defense that can be called such. You cannot see such an explosive force in attack and then nullify everything with a defense that does not exist and is ignorant. This way we cannot move forward. Yes, again, Barcelona has been phenomenal going forward. I think they've sort of just decided not to defend at all by just playing that high offside line, and it's worked a lot of the time. Against a team like Inter, where you have a strike duo who knows how to shred your defense in the center, it doesn't work that well. And I think also, if you consider that both Marcus Thuram and Lautaro Martinez are physically strong, but also very physically and mentally quick, it does show why Barcelona struggled against them. They're not used to playing against a player who has both of those traits. Usually it's either a very quick and tricky speedster or a physical, solid target man who's not very mobile. But against Inter, they had two players who had literally the best of both worlds, and they really struggled. But ultimately, I think most football neutrals do agree with this take. Barca deserves it. They have shown the best football this season. Just simply spectacular. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier about this team sort of playing this kind of football that just makes you dream again. It rolls back the years. It makes you want to get off your couch and just go and play football again. It really just takes you back to a childlike moment when you first fell in love with the game in the first place. But for all of the praise that we can heap on Barcelona, we got to remember they have won nothing as yet in terms of the Champions League, and Inter Milan are still a phenomenal team in their own right. Somebody here says Rafinha is lethal. Did you watch the magnificent shot that hit the crossbar, then bounced on the back of the keeper, rolling into the net to make it 3-3? It was a phenomenal goal, I'm not gonna lie. It was from so far out that I didn't even think he was gonna attempt that, and when it came off, I was just absolutely flabbergasted. Inter Milan are playing typical Italian, which is defend and counter attack. They hold you more on their back and breaks out to score. They outplayed the Barca defense. Yes, I think there was a point again in the later stages of the game where it looked like Inter were playing a 5-4-1 formation. I think that was after Marcus Thuram came off, and it really looked like Lautaro Martinez was the only striker. And at that point it looked like, okay, Inzaghi was fine with the draw. He knew they have to deal with another match this weekend, and he knew also that it's not a good idea to push your players now in the first leg when you got to deal with the second leg next week Tuesday. It's best to just take what you can and then go all out next week. But I think really Inter were great. They were really good. And I think it's even more incredible when you look at the stats between the two teams. Shots, Barcelona have completely outclassed Inter there with 19-7. Shots on target, again, the Blaugrana lead the way with 9-3. Possession, the big one, 72% against 28%. Passes, Barcelona 683, Inter 271. But again, the most important statistics here for me are three. Firstly, offsides. Inter Milan 5, Barcelona 0, showing again Barcelona have really just tried to use that offside trap to catch Inter, and it worked at times and at other times it just didn't. Corners, Barcelona 7, Inter 2. The difference is Inter scored from both of those corners, which leads me to what is ultimately the most important statistic in this match, the goals. Barcelona 3, Inter 3. It was a draw. It was a phenomenal game. It was a game, I would say, that definitely becomes a Champions League classic. In closing, I'd just like to say this. Barcelona-Inter yesterday was a fantastic game. The best game since years in the Champions League. 6 beautiful goals. 3 goals for Barca, 3 goals for Inter. It really was a phenomenal match, and if I'm being honest with you, the last time I felt this way about a football match was the World Cup in 2022, that final between Argentina and France, that just made my heart dance, and I felt it within me that I wasn't just a spectator, but I was part of a bigger footballing world. And I think Barcelona and Inter Milan were able to sort of capture that emotion and then just put it out and spread it to the rest of the world last night. To both of these teams, to Barcelona, to Inter Milan, to Coach Hansi Flick, and to Coach Simone Inzaghi, to each and every one of those players out there on the pitch. Thank you. Thank you for a fantastic game of football. Thank you for keeping me awake at night, where even though this match ended at 11 p.m., I could not sleep until 2 a.m. because I was still buzzing from having watched what I would say is by far the best game of 2025 so far. Thanks again guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, perhaps leave us a thumbs up. If you want to see some more fun footballing content, perhaps subscribe to the channel. But as always, I thank you for your time and I hope that you have a fantastic day further.